So, hi Sasha, thanks for being
Hi.
here with us today at the Institute. Is this the first time you're at the university for a talk like that, or is this a thing you get requests more often?
I get requested for quite a lot of talks, actually. I got requested one for Yale recently, but I couldn't make it because I had a gig in New York and it wasn't enough time. But maybe not my first time at a state university. There's a lot of independent sort of music schools like SAE and stuff.
And what does it make you feel? Like, do
I
you
mean,
like
I laugh
it?
a bit sometimes because I taught myself all of this stuff and I studied something completely different. I studied politics, but I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to learn things, and yes, of course, it's nice for people to ask you why you do stuff.
It's a little bit like when your art comes to the museum, it's a weird point, and also when your art comes to your university, you're like, oh, I'm at that stage of my career.
I don't know, I take it all with a pinch of salt because even my first thing I ever released, The Wire magazine reviewed it as like Dada, and I had to Google literally what Dada was. And I was like, Dada, wow, that's totally me, right? Why do we have to use this 1920s kind of like German art description for this? But I mean, I feel like because I didn't study any of this stuff, that it's always a bit like, it's always a huge honor if you didn't study any of this stuff, you taught yourself. I feel like what I did was not intentional. So even to play at the Philharmonie in Hamburg was like a huge honor and stuff. And so I take it all and I'm happy and hope people have a good time.
I just used the word career for your artistic path. Is it a word you would use, career? For
I don't think I'd use the word career, but I would say I'm part of an industry, which maybe some people think that if you're an artist, you paint a picture and then you just see what that picture looks like and you hang it up or something. But I guess I'm part of an industry because I live from what I do, and I have to live from what I do.
was that, or when did that became a goal for you? Like, because I guess in the beginning you do things like you want to do them, and then at a certain point you realize, oh, there's maybe some money involved too, so I don't have to do that other job. I can do that.
I think anyway, I studied European politics in German, and I really found it very interesting, but I knew I didn't want to work with any of these people. Nothing against any of these people, whoever these people are, but I didn't feel like this was going to be my environment. And so I guess I moved to Berlin because I was like, that is a place that I can be creative, and it will be a bit like an incubator where the pressure's off me, that you can do whatever you want and see how it goes. Because when I left London, it was so expensive to live there that you couldn't really just work in a bar and then like buy gear and mess around with gear and see what happens, you know? So I think it was more like, I want to be an artist. If you can ultimately live from that, that's an amazing thing to do. But to expect that is not something anyone can expect, I don't think. I know so many people who make great art and they do completely different things to earn money, so.
Do you sometimes already or still think that the continuity of being able to live from that, are you always afraid of like the next year is coming up? Will it continue? Because I know that for me, I do my things for like writing and all publishing and all that stuff, teaching for so long, and still I always think when the year ends, maybe it's a German thing too, how will the next year gonna be?
I think it's normal. You'd be stupid if you were to think that you're not going to be replaced by another person at some point. All of us in every field of our life will be replaced by other humans, so, or robots or whatever. So yeah, there's an element of fear in it, but I think I probably like that. And also, if you're born in London, you grow up with fear from a very early age. There's so much fear in the city. Basically, the way I describe, even maybe it's even Britain and America versus Germany. If you just stand on a piece of wood in a lake in Germany and it floats, you could just stand there and you could just got your little spot, right? But you're going to sink. If you don't have a plan in London, you will sink. There's no standing still, right? So I think I come from a place where already when you're very young, you realize that people have completely different lives, completely different standards of living, that the whole city and the economy actually functions through fear. More so than here, because you have a much bigger welfare state here. Yeah, as a social state, there's education is free here and stuff, right?
So to follow that up, what kind of family are you from? What was the values your family gave you, or what kind of topics were you?
I find it easiest to describe my family by saying that my mum and my dad are the first children in their family to ever go to university. I know people whose grandparents went to university, and you can already see that in sort of the development of the family. So my parents went to university not to broaden their mind and study philosophy or something. They went to university to give themselves a secure existence because they come from a country which doesn't have a social state. So Sri Lanka, right? So they went to university just literally to secure their life. The idea, they didn't have a lot of books at home. They spoke to me in English, but I didn't really see my parents associating with Western culture, to be really honest. You know, like it seemed, my mum maybe went to the library and she got classical records and recorded them onto cassette when I was a kid. And my dad was like, you think you're white now, right? So just saying, right? So there were little bits of culture. I went to the temple a lot when I was a kid, and they have a lot of Carnatic music there. So there's a lot of people sitting on the floor, chanting, singing, being meditative. But that's how I think class has got a lot to do with art, unfortunately. And so, no, all the things which I do, nobody ever expected me to do these things, and I was not actually allowed to do them. It's definitely like, don't do that. Okay, I'll give you the quotes. One-way ticket to unemployment. You will live on the street. I'll put the accent. You're going to live on the street. Do you want to live on the street? Like this. So all of this. But actually, I think in a way I was kind of lucky because I was like, now I have a direction. I'm going to do everything they don't want me to do. That gave me a lot of direction. So, yeah, but I learned the only form of art that they probably appreciate is actually music, right? So my mum played the harmonium as a kid. It's an Indian instrument that you pump. She taught me piano. We argued a lot. My dad loves Ravi Shankar. But, I mean, not much else, to be honest. A bit shopping mall. Sorry, it's like this. They're a bit shopping mall. It's like this, and it's fine for them.
So when you described, you went for it anyway, like this kind of pancake attitude to go for your own way. Still, there must have been a moment where music spoke to the first time to you, for real. Like, do you remember what was the first music that really touched you?
I mean, I guess going to the temple a lot until about the age of 7, like every Sunday, listening to people on like sitars and vinas and singing, and we were also apparently singing. I mean, music touches, a lot of different forms of music touched me, but I also remember being a kid and like hearing like Boy George on the radio, having a Walkman, having that George Michael album Faith, being really sad when I found out he was gay. So I was given a Walkman and they weren't that bothered what I listened to. I think they just thought, just study and shut up. They didn't realise that all of this youth culture and all of this London stuff was going to seep into your head and that you weren't going to turn out the way that they wanted you to.
So they didn't understand they fix you up for what they exactly don't want.
Yeah, I didn't release any music till I was 25 years old or 24 years old. And I think I was a bit angry at that point. But at the same time, I know people who got record deals when they were like 18. They're already burnt out by the time they're 20. They had some weird managers that just had this. And now they do something completely different. So in a way, I feel like actually it was good to do other things, to grow as a person, to exist as a person before people start like telling you you're good. Because if you're like 18, then maybe you just actually really believe that too much, you know. I think it's good to develop as a human with no attention on you in a way, and then launch your stuff rather than have everyone watching you while you're just growing as a person. Is probably not really healthy.
Also, you go too much for the candy because you're younger, and then you do all the stuff younger people are doing.
Kind of. I think in the end, I think the music industry is quite a hardcore place, you know, and a lot of people who are artists who they're looking for something, they're looking to prove something. Otherwise, you wouldn't put yourself through this, right? So I think in a way, it was probably better to have already done stuff, you know, to have already studied something, to have already have worked in different things, worked in stuff I hated, which I didn't want to do, but just kind of be like, wow. I think the ability as a musician at any point to go and get a shit job is really important. I haven't done it since 2008, so I'm really lucky. I'm going to touch some wood. But the ability just to go and get over yourself and just go and make some money and not sit in your house and be depressed like, why am I there, is really important.
When you talk about the music industry, as you have insights about the British one and the German one, do you think they are all the same, or is there a difference for you?
I actually don't have so much insights about the British music industry because I didn't release any music till I moved to Berlin. But I guess I have, look, even if you okay, I always give this example. If you go to a supermarket in London, there'll be a mango and there'll be a sticker on it saying, a very ripe mango. It's not so often you go to a supermarket here where somebody's actually marketed it. There's so much more marketing in everything. They have words for everything. People here are not even... I think that Germany is just not the same place for marketing. I think language is used in a different way. So, I don't know. I think Berlin is just a special place because in the time that I grew up there or moved there, it was a very DIY scene. There were lots of squats. There were lots of people sharing stuff. I had loads of correct software. People were friendly and nice, and you were kind of off the economic pressure, and it's not the same now at all, I guess.
Also, you don't have to advertise your own art as much with words and sending it in, and anonymity. You can perform much more in a city like Berlin because there was so much more happening at that time. So I guess, how did you get your first record deal?
First record deal, actually, I'm the first tracks, which I made tracks with some people, and they were basically like all techno produced, and I was so bored. I was like, God, I don't want to be a sample. Just go and sample someone. Why do you need me is all I was thinking, you know? And then I met a friend of mine, Robert, from Jacuzzi, who made lots of crazy beats, and he'd actually was part of the first Red Bull Music Academy. So we just made some tracks, and I don't think I'd ever even thought I would do a demo. He made the demos. I went to London, and I remember giving one into Reflex Records, and he sent one to Kitio, and he knew some of these people because he'd been on the first Red Bull, which was quite an early sort of thing, Red Bull Music Academy. And I remember Reflex Records wrote back, and that was actually enough for me. I was like, wow, I can retire now. It's just amazing. Aphex Twins label wrote back to me, I'm fine, I'm just going to go work in a bar, that's it. But he was more like, let's do more, you know? I think he had much more vision than me, not more vision, he was more focused. He also went to like design academy, did artistic things earlier than me. I think I was still just coming down off this whole parental trip and was actually partying quite a lot. I was slower than him. I'm much, much faster now, for sure. I became a faster person. But in terms of focus, I think people develop focus at different times in their lives. People don't develop linear, you know? Someone could be 18 with a lot of focus. Someone can gain focus at 30, I think.
But that time when you were on Kitio and when that whole Berlin things happened was also slower. You didn't have to be that focused. You could still be out of focus and could make it because today everything is faster, everything is more expensive. So you have to be much more focused to get your stuff going.
It's definitely faster, and I think what I really profited from is doing gigs in like IMA and places like this. They weren't like people with phones in your face and then they'd just put it online the next day of you like being drunk on a stage or something, right? It was more of they might talk about it, but they're not gonna. It wasn't like this, everyone's watching immediately. I really felt this incubator thing. I took time. I bought some gear. The first piece of gear I ever bought was some Genelecs because I was like, well, even if I never make music, I'm always going to want to listen to other people's music. So I've still got them to this day. It's like 20 years ago. And I just took it kind of slow. And I think that's because of the attitude of the city, you know.
I mean, you also, or it sounds like that, you never had to really knock hard on the doors because in a way it immediately happened with Kitio then? And then from there it rolled on with projects? I
think it was always hard for us to find labels, to be honest, because even with Jacuzzi, and it's the same with my project now, it's hard to describe this music. It doesn't have a clear demographic, right? It sounds really funny, but look, I'll give you an example. Fortet makes a certain type of music, and we know pretty much how his public are going to look. That's a very clear thing, and then you can make money, right? If you're like, oh, we got 3 different kind of people in the band, and they keep changing the beat, and they keep doing this, who's your demographic, you know? So I think when I moved to Berlin, there was this magazine called Debug, and it was called Zeitschrift für elektronische Lebensaspekte. I knew this mag, and people would say like, oh, they'd assume that electronic music was basically a straight bass drum. They assumed it was house and techno. And then they'd say, oh, you had some really weird words like, macht Elektro, or I was like, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? I don't understand. You mean like in the 80s, like that kind of like shuffled sort of 80s electro beat? No, they just mean not rock is what they meant, right? And I'd be like, yeah, but we don't put the bass drum in the same place because there's so many places to put a bass drum. Why would I put it in the same place every time? And they're like, okay. And there was so much like, oh, when you move the bass drum, that's black people's music. When it's straight, I'll go there and then everyone's going to look like me. And so we always had this, and I still have it with my music now, right? Actually, that, it sounds really awful, but I think that people, look, you know, the people who listen to Disclosure, they look at Disclosure and they think, yeah, cool, that's who I want to be. You know what I mean, right? So obviously, if you actually typecast yourself with what you look like, the music you make, and who you're going to aim for, it's much easier. And because I'm a very confused person who has a lot of different influences, there's less people like me on the planet than the people who are like, I'm this, I'm this, I'm that, then I think it was actually not so easy to find labels because the albums were so diverse within themselves, you know?
But did you have the feeling that the people around you were giving the discussions to you too? Did you, like, for example, like Kiddio was not like a techno house label, it wasn't even an electronic label, it was a, I would call it special avant-garde pop in a way, because they had like really different, like they had like
wide
Zentrum, they had Gonzales, they had...
But how many other labels were like that in Berlin at that time?
Not many.
So how would I have found it easy to find a label? Do you see what I mean? There was not that. I feel like in that time that was one of the few labels which was actually acting like a small indie. You know what I mean? Like a wide indie or whatever. And I feel like everything else. I feel like nowadays you have people, they listen to everything, and that wasn't the case 15 years ago. People were much more like, oh no, they go and they listen to black music, and then they go and they listen to electro and trance. And now you ask a kid, like, what are you into? They're going to listen to everything. Do you know what I mean? It's coming through them from everywhere, from all channels, you know? And this whole... And then you also... Okay, it's going to sound funny. When rappers started talking about Molly, and then it was like, wow, black people take drugs. Whoa, it's crazy, right? So, I mean, I feel like a lot has changed in the 20 years. That in London, it wasn't like that, because London is just a strange city where everything's on top of each other. But for many other places in the world, they might be looking at that, but they don't really get it, because why would they?
No, I meant it more in the case as you described that you sent one demo to Reflex, your friend sent one to Kiddio, and it immediately happened. And after that, it felt like your career was always going, or you...
I mean, it's interesting. What did Aphex Twin say? He said, Black Barbie, great, love that track. Hated the rest, obviously, because it's all completely different. So every label was like, yeah, cool, I like that track. Can you make more like that? You send it to a major, they were like, that one. Can you make a whole album like that? I was like, no, obviously not. Do you know what I mean? Why would we do that? So I think it was actually not really easy. And I think...
Aphex Twin said that?
Aphex Twin loved Black Barbie because it was super dirty, gritty, grimy tune, right? And then we had something else on there which was just smoother. And they were like, you know, I don't know if it's Aphex Twin himself. It was a male from Reflex. Whether it was actually Aphex Twin, I don't think Richard was sitting there doing this. But I think a lot of labels were kind of like, that bit's cool. Can you just get rid of that bit? It's not, I don't think it's easy to make music that is not that easily categorizable.
Have you met label people where you would say, I respect them so much that I want to have artistic discussions with them about my track, that I want to hear what they think I should get rid of, or what I should add, or which direction I should go? Or is your opinion more likely, I'm the artist, I do what I want to do, and I don't like this?
It's a good question. I think the label I'm on at the moment, we have a pretty good relationship, because I send in a lot of tracks, and he helps me put the track list together because I find it confusing, right? He's really good at orders, and I know how he thinks. And there's a bunch of stuff on there which I know he knows he can't sell, but it doesn't matter. He knows who I am, and he knows what kind of artist I am. So I actually enjoy that. Then, so in a way, I guess the best relationship I've had with the label has probably been with FOF, who I'm with right now. Just because it's the third release, and somehow he's good at track listings and I'm just not. I'm always like, I made all this music and I just don't know what to put first or fifth. And he'll come back and I'll be like, yeah, that kind of works. Let's swap this. So we have a pretty good... Also, what I respect about him is he's not a touring artist. He just does a label. That's a really cool thing. You know, if your label person is like, hey, I'm just really busy playing Ibiza, they're not really in a position to actually. So I appreciate about him, that he's like, look, I curate music. That's what I do. And this is cool for us. He doesn't, I mean, he DJs sometimes, but he's definitely not like, I'm doing this label to try and get laid. It's not like that. So.
As the students are, of course, interested, how did you get in contact with that label?
Actually, he did a little release in 2009. It was a collaboration between me and one of my bandmates, and he put it on a vinyl in like 2009. a random track. And then when I made all the weird Perera Elsewhere stuff, I was like, nobody in Berlin's going to get this music at all. It's so quiet. They're not going to understand what's on, you know? And I thought, well, it kind of has this, I don't know, I just reached out to him because I was like, okay, LA. Some of the things which are coming, I don't know, I felt like it's a wider city. And generally in my life, I don't do cold calling. Cold calling is not going to help you. Hi, dear info at blah, blah. It's not going to help you, really. So I tend to look around and who's around me, whose energy I feel, who I feel is approachable, who I feel will logically like the music. Do you know what I mean? And he was into it. Actually, the first thing he said with the festival, he was like, wow, nice sketches. I was like, no, that's finished products, man. He was like, let me listen in, I guess. I'd do that. And he goes, no, it's really he goes, it is really magic. I said, thank you. Nice sketches. Yeah, but my first album as Perera Elsewhere was definitely like a reaction to this very produced jacuzzi stuff where I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. I want to be another person. I want to surprise people. I want people to be like, oh my God, she's quiet. You know, so, but I didn't know who to send it to in Berlin at all.
Did you also have to hang out with him a little bit longer before you made a decision to sign in? Is that also important that you like to be around that person?
If he'd not lived on the other side of the world, I would have met him. But actually, he released an album. I didn't meet him until 2016, weirdly, because I'd been there in 2008, and I didn't play there again till 5 years later. And I met him after that. But I can really vibe with people off the phone. I can tell, I don't know, I feel like if I talk to people, I can kind of feel their energy. And if I do that more than once or twice or a few times, I trust my instincts with people. Of course, you can be wrong, but no risk, no fun, right?
Is it like a classic indie deal construction, you would say? Like where you split the incomes? So it's a 50-50 deal?
It is, it's a 50-50 deal. Yeah. So actually, my contract ran out ages ago. We just do it like this now. Yeah. I'm not even going back for a contract. I'm like, whatever, we do an album. If I don't want to do the next one now, I'll go. And if he's not offended, we just kind of do this. I'm also very different to the other artists on the label.
Also, you do it for so long that you trust him now, so you don't have to.
I do trust him, yeah.
As we mentioned before, like you started off with KDO, which is a long time ago. The label went bankrupt. I guess you got your rights back.
No.
Okay, you didn't get your rights back?
No, Reich, if you're watching.
Wow. So the whole catalog...
I think they changed the name of the whole label, and then a load of artists... And then suddenly they kind of moved the rights to this other label. But I mean, look, I don't get too heady about these things because let's just be honest, you know what I mean? Who cares? Oh, it sounds really funny, but it's like that music is done already. Nobody's going to sync that music. Like 3 people are going to listen to it on Spotify. So I'm not going to get really principally minded about, let me just hunt down Reich now and get that. Could have done back then, but generally, I don't know. I mean, I would go on a few fights, but I think it's not worth it on a lot of levels. It depends what it is, but you've always got to think about it. It's okay. Well, he needed it. Be generous. Right, you needed it. From everyone.
That's a nice statement. But do you get like statements from him and do you get money?
No, and I guess he gets some little pissing amount of cents from all his digital catalogues from all these little artists who everyone's forgotten about. So I personally don't take it utterly in a horrible way. But yeah, I wouldn't do it to other artists if it was me. I probably wouldn't have a label anyway. It would just give me a headache.
I don't also think it's legal, by the way. But
no, but imagine how much you would spend in a lawyer trying to get back your 25 cents. I would say, okay, get over it, breathe, do some meditation, make more music, carry on. I think.
Besides that part of your back catalog, do you have the feeling as an artist that your back catalog is still always vibrating with you and is coming back? Like your new album is out, you have cover stories with Missy magazine, for example, you got a prize. Do you feel like that the people start listening to your back catalog?
I think of the Perera Elsewhere stuff, yeah. I think it's hard to find some of the jacuzzi stuff. One of the albums is missing because some other label went bust, but I don't know how much time people really, really, really have to go back. How much music is being released right now? Do you know what I mean? But sometimes, the other day I was on Instagram and I saw this girl DJing on Höhe and she's playing a jacuzzi track from 2006. I was like, that's so cute. Stuff happens. I also believe in fate. Throw stuff in the universe, coincidence, chance.
Okay, yeah.
You know? I don't know. I think it's for me, it's longevity. You know, I think nothing you achieve is going to be happening right now. I think it's over years. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I feel like there are certain people who do really feel it, which is amazing. It's better if they feel you over years than if they just like into you for a minute, buy a t-shirt, forget about you. I think a slower growing curve is just healthier as an individual in life.
I just asked that too because I want to get like an idea how important the sales, for example, are for you as an artist to make a living, in opposite to the performances. And sometimes it's also nice if you have a back catalog. It gives you a certain like, okay, I don't have to hurry to make the next record, or maybe I don't have to tour in between. I can concentrate on writing and stuff like that. So
I always do everything at the same time. Whatever comes in, I kind of do it, and then when I have to finish my album, I finish my album. And I mean, when I compare my streams with the other artists on FOF, actually they stream much more than me because their music is easier to categorize, right? So, I mean, I'm fine with my streams. For sure, they go up every time you release. I don't look at them every day. I don't go on my Spotify artists and wonder what cities people are listening to my music in. I'm happy that they do. But I genuinely think by just, I don't know, not doing more, but collaborating with people, communicating with people, that's playing, producing, teaching, whatever, is how you connect with people. I enjoy the physicality of meeting people and listening to other people's music. I go out, I go to concerts. I think streams is great, but it's just like a stat, right?
you just mentioned your collaborations. There's like Teichmänner, I know Modeselektor, stuff like that. First off, I would be interested how you choose artists you want to work with. What's the reason for that?
So for Gonja Sufi on my first Perera Elsewhere album, I was actually like, dude, you've got to sing on this because there's no one else who fits on the album. Then he goes, no, I want to release it. After someone else had told me they're nice sketches, right? And then I was like, Gonja Sufi, you're such a deep person, but you're out there, man. You can't release this. You being my label dude is not going to work. So then loads more chatting, and I was like, please, can you just sing on the album? And I don't know, I mean, him, I asked him because I just had listened to his music and I felt his vibe. I don't know, I've never thought about, and maybe if you look, again, if let's say you make a techno record and you want to have like that one vocal track and then you think in a really constructed way about this, but I don't think about it in such a constructed way. I just tend to go on vibes, you know, and what other people do creatively. And I collaborated with Disfig, you know, Disfig. She does stuff with The Bug and with Asian Dope Boys. They just did a huge show called Trance and stuff. Amazing artists. I think I'm attracted to people. With Modeselektor, I asked them to do a remix for me. They did a remix for Jacuzzi in 2002, 3, 4, Black Barbie remix already. And then they asked me to be on that album, yeah.
And that would be my next question. When they ask you, do you know what they want always? Do you discuss that with the other artists? Like what you should contribute, or is it more like you just go for the vibe of them?
It depends if they send me something which I like. Usually back then it was more like, okay, we're collaborating, you're going to be our MC, here's the beat. Then I'd be like, okay, give me the beat. And I'd always record on my own bit, sketch it out, see how it sounds. Sometimes send stuff back and be like, do you like that? But with them, I went in the studio at some point, you know. But now I collaborate in a completely different way. I never record vocals in front of any other people anymore in my life.
Why that?
I don't want to. As simple as that.
But has there been a moment?
No, I was really good at it, but I feel like, why should I? I feel that I make the best vocals when I'm alone in my own space. I record my own vocals. I do everything with my own vocals. I tweak my own vocals. I pan them. I remember doing collabs with people, and these people, some of them didn't even know how to do a vocal because all they'd done was make beats with like packs, basically. And then I was like, oh, you've never EQ'd a vocal? Then I've got a nice mind. Let me just record it for you. And then I send it back and they'll be like, but you've done everything. You've panned it. Yeah, I said, yeah, because I'm a vocalist. I know how to sound. And you are a beat maker from sample packs. So why would you mix my vocal now? And that's actually how I also got into production, because I was like, well, I know how I want my vocal to sound. I'm just going to use some compression, use some EQ, bit of reverb. And I'd be like, oh, those are actually all the things you use to make any sound fit in a certain space, you know? I was like, wow, I'm actually sculpting sound with my own voice. So that's probably what brought me into production in the first place. Was it for a Japanese person? I had to do some feature for some big Japanese people. My band were away, was in 2010, and I was like, okay, I'm going to the studio, I'm getting that really nice mic and this lunchbox compressor thing, and I had it in my apartment. I lived in a 1-room apartment. I wake up and the mic was like looking at me. I was like, okay, I really should be doing that. So I did something for a feature, and then I started recording the Perera Elsewhere stuff because I had this super expensive mic in my house, this compressor, and I'd just turn up the compressor so much, and I'd be like, and it sounded like, wow, there's a ghost, man. And that's kind of how the Perera Elsewhere sound came. And then I'd also record this guitar with no line out. I didn't have a line out, so I'd just turn up the compressor, turn up the mic, and be like, whoa. And then I didn't understand that you could actually EQ reverb. I didn't understand that. So I just put tons of reverb, and there'd be all this like weird. I was like, I love this. So actually, in a way, I look at a microphone as an instrument. It's an amazing instrument. Nice mics are nice mics, right?
Same goes for voice, right?
Voice is an instrument for sure. But I don't know. I mean, even with the MacBook mic, you can do amazing things if you just want to have a low cut on everything. I mean, even when I do workshops with people who don't use their voice, I'm like, go under the mic, hear that. It's like going underwater, actually.
You're doing a workshop here tomorrow, so I don't want to go too much into the technical stuff, but a little bit, as I can imagine, you don't experiment just with the mic, you experiment a lot with software too, and in general. So the question would be, would you say you are a very playful artist in the studio, and that you like to experiment rather than follow a linear plan?
I can't watch tutorials. I'm too ADHD. So I just mess around. And if I meet a roadblock, I'm like, oh, maybe I Google how to get out of that roadblock. Or I don't know. I find ignorance is bliss, actually, that you can do a lot of really crazy things by not knowing about it. And even when I do workshops, I'm like, look, all those parameters, you don't need to know what they mean. Mess around with them, listen to it, and you're going to work out what it means because you've been listening to music your whole life and you've heard all of these effects. You've heard, I mean, the first time, I know what the first audio effect I ever used in my life was. When I was 8, I was singing in the fan. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then later, 20 years later, I'm like, damn, that fan was a flanger. I mean, it took me a while to work that out, but I really think that if you use your instincts with sound, you know, the people are like, what's reverb? I'm like, why is the guy in the underground singing in that bit with the really tall bit? Because he wants to sound good. Why did God in the church build this big ceiling so the guy at the front sounds important? You know what I mean? There's so much, I think there's so much that we know about sound that you can work very instinctively with all of this stuff and just not be scared of it. But that's why privacy is a good thing. If there's like 3 beefy dudes sitting next to you, like, you don't know what note to use, you don't know what note to use, then you'll be like, fuck off, right? That's why privacy is very important.
How important are mistakes?
Great. So many mistakes are great. I mean, you never know what's going to happen when it's the same if you're playing a show and you fuck something up and you're like, ooh, how do I get out of this? Like a dick, right? And then something really amazing happens. And you're like, whoa, that was magic. It's exactly not what I expect. And I had to think on in that moment and do something I don't usually do. It's the same. That's why actually I record all the time. And that MIDI capture in the Ableton 11 where you're just messing around and you're like, why didn't I press record? And you put it back and you're like, shit, this is magic, right? So I actually record a lot. I know people who, when they come to collaborate with me, I'm like, just play those toms. And they'll be like, don't record, I'm not ready. I'm like, why can't I record? Later on, that might have been the best bit and you've missed it if you didn't record it. So I don't know, I see it more as curating your own errors. You make a load of shit and you're like, but that bit's magic, dump the rest.
So the album is all of the magic combined? You don't have to answer that one.
Album's magical. No, I don't know.
So we talked about the vocals, we talked about the effects and the experimentations. I want to talk about the lyrics too. How important are those for you, and how would you describe your way of experimenting or working with words, how it changed through your...
So I do think I work with word and sound specifically, and I think I used to be much less abstract. I used to be ranting at people a lot, which was really cool. But then I decided I don't want to, before I make music, have a really ranty message that everyone has to listen to. Because 1, I don't want to have to do that. It's going to inhibit me as a musician. 2, when I go out somewhere, I don't necessarily want to be told what's awful in the world. I might just want to listen to something and escape from what's awful in the world. So I think I work in a different way to before. I'm more abstract for sure. And I can't write words unless I've made music that sucks me into a certain place. So I'm not going to write words on ugly sounding MIDI instruments. I'll first make atmospheres and like 3 chords or whatever, a little loop of chords. And if there's enough atmosphere in that, then I feel like writing words to it. And usually I'll go straight to the mic now. Before, I think I used to sit at a piece of paper and write, because I was writing on someone else's beat, actually. That's probably why the writing process changed, right? Before it was like, hey, I've got this great beat, do you want to record on it? And now it's like, well, it's a combination thing of what I want to write first, the beat, the music, or the words. So I also am happy to make instrumental music. Like on every album of mine, there's usually like 8 songs for instrumentals. I just want to be able to make music without using my voice as well, if I feel to. It's a freedom which I enjoy.
When you said in the beginning, you talked about techno, about house, and well, obviously the people can't handle the in-between areas where they don't know exactly what it is. Do you have the feeling that with the moment there are lyrics in your tracks, that the people are coming for them? Because it's also a thing people like take.
I guess so. I'm probably someone who, yes, I don't listen to tons of songs. Interestingly, I don't listen to tons of vocal music. But when I do listen to vocals, then they're vocals I really love. Like, I don't need vocals on music unless they're doing something which I really think is utterly amazing. So I'm really critical about my own vocals. I find it much harder to write songs than I do to write instrumental music. But I think if I did what I'm doing without using my voice, I'd have less identity for sure. So, I mean, I love pitching my voice. Even when I started pitching my voice, people were always like, who's that guy? My family were like, who's that guy? And I don't know, I enjoy, sometimes I wish I just sang naturally pitched. I really think vocal processing is a fun place to be, to play with your own characters.
When you say listening to other music, how important is that for you as an artist, you would say? Are you a person, besides of the DJing, where you obviously constantly have to listen to music to get new inspiration? Would you say that the listening to others' music is also important for you for creating your own music?
I don't know if it is, because I can't think of that many artists who make the same music as me, if I'm really honest. There are some comparisons and stuff, but I find it hard. What I DJ is different to what I make. But I think it keeps me very positive. Buying other people's music on Bandcamp every time I go to DJ, feeling positive about the amount of musicians and what's coming out all over the world. It's a really good thing, because there's a lot of people I know who've been making music as long as me. They get really bitter and twisted, and they start being really bitchy about all these kids making music. And I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? Stop bitching about them. I just bought 4 things from them, you know, and then I have to go out and play it the next day. I'm like, this is ace. And it makes me positive about other people's music, and not just super self-centered, I think, you know. And I kind of specifically almost don't play my tunes when I'm DJing, because I really think that my role is to communicate music, which is fantastic, you know, and to be enthusiastic about that. And I can enthuse other people about other people's music. That's a cool medium, I think, you know, on top of what I'm doing as a producer and a creator, you know. But I know a lot of people would be like, why do you even do that? A lot of people would be like, that's so cheap, DJing in 2023, where my mum's a DJ. Be like, well, it is. If you play cheap music, it's cheap.
But it's also a very popular thing, so I guess why not doing it if it's working for you and you enjoy it? So
I just think if I always played at the same time in the same kind of space, it would bore me. So I enjoy playing live shows, 9, 10 o'clock, midnight, whatever. I also enjoy playing a DJ gig at 3 o'clock in the morning. If I DJ'd every weekend at 3 o'clock in the morning, there were always screaming people in front of me, irrelevant of what I play. I think I'd get really bored. And I think if I always had to do the live thing, I don't know, I really enjoyed changing the environment, being with different kinds of people, seeing what different promoters do, seeing what different institutions do. So all of that interests me, actually, the behind the scenes. So it's great to go to different locations. I mean, I played in Bielefeld recently. The guy who built the sound system works in the A&E. It works in the A&E, okay? Built the sound system himself, played a UK garage set on vinyl before me. And I was like, have you been to London a lot? He was like, once. I was like, I mean, this is touching. In Bielefeld, of all places, it's quite touching. So they're not all like that. Sometimes you'll go somewhere and be a bunch of crackheads and you're like, whoa, why did I do this? But But then, you know, when you meet this dude and you're like, wow, you really built a cool sound system. You're such a geek and a doctor. You know, I actually get touched by other people's passion for music.
How do people request you? Are people like particular asking for a live set or particular asking for DJ set, or are they sometimes also communicating with you, telling you this is the environment and what do you think would fit better for you?
I also play solo live. No, I mean, they usually write, I usually put them onto my booker, or if they write to me, I'll also try and find out maybe what they want, if they know someone I know, or whatever, but I'll put them onto my booker, and it just depends what environment. A lot of people want the live AV band show, which is very special, but a lot of people really can't afford it, and they can't afford the backline, they don't have a visual screen. And I probably get more live requests than DJ requests, but also get DJ requests. I just played in New York 2-3 weeks ago at Public Records. It's a really DJ spot. I enjoyed it. But I guess they're not booking me because they're like, okay, I don't know. I think they're booking me because of who I am and because of the other things I do in my life. I don't think they're just booking me because I'm a normal bass DJ or something.
As you mentioned before, you work permanently on a record and you do a live set. You did everything is mixed up.
It's tiring, dude.
Are there some times where you say no to live stuff because you need to? Now I need to stop. Now I really have to concentrate. Or is it really going all the way through?
I try to say no to stuff. Obviously, I try my best to say no to stuff. But if they're wagging money in your face in a place which is good. And it's, why would you say no? Do you know what I mean? But I'm also used to putting myself under loads of pressure because I come from London, where you live in a pressure cooker from day one. So it depends. I say no to stuff as well. It's really good to say no to stuff. I said no to composing the soundtrack for a documentary recently, just because I was like, no way, this director, I can't cope. Actually, you know, I do also compose for like art installations and film and stuff, and that can be really time consuming. And I say no to stuff for sure.
Because it's more time consuming because the other person says no to a lot of things, or change that, make this and that.
A lot of people ask me for features also, and I'm like, no, I just really need to focus on my own music actually. So I say no to features and stuff.
But is that sometimes out of money reasons difficult to say no, or did you learn that over the years that money should not interfere with my artistic decision?
Shouldn't interfere. I'm not going to do a feature with someone whose music I hate just because they wag money in my face. I would have to do it under another name, and then they're not going to want me. Yeah. They're only coming to me because they want my name, right? So I don't mind doing features under other random fake names, but people are just trying to basically tap onto your shit. So I try to be selective and nice about it.
So you mentioned that
I also try not to do any remixes. This is really like even worse than features. I don't know. I just think it's like you can spend a lot of time doing remixes for people that won't be pushed properly. They'll just be added onto some other stuff. So I'm really like, no, please no remixes. Unless it's like really special or something. If it's a really special track, I'm not going to say no. I did some stuff for Nina Hagen recently because it's Nina Hagen, right? And when else are you going to do something for Nina Hagen in your life? And they paid me really well. But people also ask if I want to produce newer artists, and I'm like, in theory, yes, but send me the best song. I'm like that by now. I want to produce the hit, guys. And then if there's like some hierarchy of some other producers where I notice that I'm going to get pushed into the non-hit, I'm like, no. So you do have to be selective. I do think, yeah, it's like you're sculpting your own annoying little career. Use the word before it's true. I mean, I try to do it as authentically as possible, but I'm living from it. So sometimes I'm jealous of the people who have a normal job and just go in their cellar and play with their thousands of euros of modular gear and then go upstairs, watch Netflix. I never watch Netflix. I feel guilty.
You mentioned London, of course, on a hustle there. Then you moved to Berlin, which was a completely different zone when you moved there. It was cheap, like food was cheap, the apartments were cheap. Everybody was more easy going out by that and not having to think about making the money. Now, 20 years later, Berlin is a different picture. How do you experience that change, and what does it make to your daily life?
I mean, I think it was a really special time. It was also funny because when I left London, everyone was like, why are you going to Germany? They really didn't know what Berlin was. I was like, that's all right, it doesn't matter. Nobody knew what it was until about at least 2005 or 6. It's a special time. I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, I actually really like the fact that it's more diverse than ever before in Berlin. I think this is kind of healthy for the city. it's actually still not diverse enough. Every time I go to London, New York, I'm just like, wow, fuck, real diversity. Because I'm missing people's parents and grandparents. That's what I'm missing, because that's where the food is at, okay? You have this collection of all these people who've come to Berlin from fuck knows where with all this, but I'm like, we need, some generations to have, it's so new. It's like a new yogurt pot, Berlin is maybe America now. I'm going to get a shot for all the things I said here today, right? So, I think there's also something exciting about it being new, and I think the city's going to be so different in 20 years. When you think of what people have come there and what people are having kids there, it's going to be a completely... Germany as a whole is going to be completely different. Has to be. So, I don't know if I like it. The good thing about Berlin is you have a turnover of a lot of creative people. So you always meet new people with new impetus, which is nice. Some people leave. But I do think there are a lot of other places in the world too.
Which?
West Africa. 5 hours from Paris. No time difference. None of it is Berlin, obviously. Berlin is in the European Union, it's in Germany, there's a social state. But I think, I'm also like, wow, I have 2 of the most powerful passports in the whole world. I have a German passport, I have a British passport. What the fuck am I doing here? What are all of us doing here? You know how many people want to get here? We're here already. So, yeah.
I asked that question also about the aspect of the community, because obviously when things are cheaper, people have more time to go out. They meet each other more often, and that what Berlin was about in the noughties. Like you meet a lot, you have a very close community, which makes something for you as an artist. Do you still have a very close community?
Actually, yeah, because when Corona happened, I was suddenly back in the city and not going anywhere. And you could only walk up and down the canal with a beer in your hand. And then you started seeing all the same people again. It was actually a bit like when I got there. I felt like that everyone was reduced into these areas. I actually made a whole bunch of new friends who lived in 4 streets from my house. So, no, I'm a really communicative person. I kind of need people around me. Not always, but I like having people around me. And I bitch about Berlin a lot, but for sure, it's a liberal city with a lot of like-minded people in it, and they're still very helpful. You can still borrow gear from people. You can get information from people. People have got time to help you out, I think. Maybe less than before. Apartments are more expensive and stuff, but I still think there's such a turnover of new people coming in that this culture of somebody new coming is so normal that everyone's like, hey, this is how you get in the Künstlerin, this is how you do the blah, 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 blah. It's all before, I think there are companies which do that now. Before you had to just ask your German mate, hi, help me. So.
You're living in a part of Neukölln, right? Or do you like it there? Because it's one of the parts of Berlin everybody's talking most about, the gentrification made it very complicated too.
Yeah, funny. I think Neukölln, especially Hammerplatz, is one of the places, apart from Wedding and Hammerplatz, these are the 2 places in Berlin which remind me of London, actually, where it's really just a mess. London is a mess, And of course it's really gentrified, but I watched London get gentrified. The last place I lived in was Brixton, and it's totally changed, even in the time that I was living there. It is... I try not to worry about these things, I've got a big studio. I invite people over, I let people in, cook a lot, let a lot of people come over and cook. I'm into cooking. In every city, every city is changing. Nothing's going to stay the same, So, and I'm lucky. I just got really lucky that I got a publishing deal in 2012 and I was intelligent enough to actually go to a bank and buy my place, which I'm still paying off from a bank. Will do for the next 15 years of my life, but nobody can push my rent up.
Nice.
But to be honest, I told tons of people that I did that, and I know people who'd actually inherited money, had money in their bank account, and they didn't do it. So I don't know, it was a fear thing. The reason I did it was because I was scared and I knew what was going to happen already. And I think most people didn't realize that was going to happen.
Because you came from a city where it
happened. I came from a city which was gentrified. But you've got, even a place like Brixton, right? It was ghetto when I lived there. Before that, 100 years before that, it was rich Victorian grandmothers. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's Stadtteile, they change over time. It's hard to freeze it all,
Are your parents visiting you sometimes there?
I haven't seen my dad since 2003. My mum comes occasionally, yeah. Comes occasionally. And my cousin comes, my sister comes, yeah.
Does she like your music now, your mother? And does she understand the life you have chosen?
I'm playing in the Berlin Philharmonic next year, and she said she's going to come, and she was pretty happy about that. Like,
something.
Like, I mean, look, you have to understand, my mum sings like a Carnatic singer. For me, it sounds like a broken violin. I sound like a dude. I mean, on the phone, I sound like a dude to anyone Sri Lankan, you know? So, but she does, actually, my mum started trying to mess around with Logic a few years ago, and I helped her. And so my mother can actually record herself on Logic, you know, and at the age of 70, it's pretty funny. I think she appreciates what I've done, but I think she's not really going to actually appreciate the music, which is fair enough.
Did you have role models when you started off?
I did, and I saw your questions, interesting questions, right? Say the ones that I've mentioned. It's a really interesting question. I'll say what you said in the questions, because you went on the internet and you found ones where I've talked about men as my role models.
Well, I noted down in my question, can you note some role models for your music? And I found a lot of male ones, like Lee Scratch Perry, Massive Attack, Ronnie Size, Pole, and I was wondering, there must also be...
There are tons, and what's really interesting is the era of music which they've come from, and they're all kind of producers, right? And they were not... You had female role models who were not actually producers, but in that time, you see it from exactly that. I think that's quite interesting. Yeah, I have a lot of female role models. When I think of when I was a kid, you know Tracy Chapman?
Yes, sure.
I mean, I think I just thought, wow, what a crazy voice she's got, and all her tragic stories. I was like, I loved like social drama. Thought she was amazing. Erykah Badu is still a huge hero of mine. This is like how you just stay crazy forever. I mean, she's just gold, right? Then I'm going to mention Alice Coltrane, which I think is so interesting, like how I think she's amazing. But now, if she did what she was doing then, now, everyone would be like, cultural appropriation.
Might happen.
For sure. She was the biggest appropriator. Same with Janis Joplin, you know, and stuff like this, right? So I think Alice Coltrane is really amazing. Mika Levy, I think, is like a awesome, amazing person. Who else did I have on that? Oh, yeah, I wanted to go through kiddie stuff. I mean, Nena Cherry and Salt and Pepper when I was like a kid, obviously. But that, in the end, it's also kind of pop marketing. It's just like, here, let's just get like a strong female role model for little kids like me to be like, hey, what's up, you know? So actually, you can see from all of those role models, the ones where I've mentioned dudes, I was looking for a female role model who makes weird-ass music, right? And from those, you don't really see them. So now we've got Mika Levy, and they're amazing female producers for sure. Just, it's interesting that you've dug out a load of men.
Yeah. What's your, as you mentioned, cultural appropriation, I wonder what's your point on that topic? Is that something you
I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
No, I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
No, I've got nothing to be afraid of. I think hybrids, in the end, are forms of appropriation. I think it's okay to have this discussion. I think it's been really valid as a discussion for people to think about what they do, right? And I mean, especially, I understand the discussion so much within techno, to be honest. Because as I said, when I moved to Germany, people were like, oh, but you guys make black music. We're listening to techno. I was like, like this. I mean, really, I think... I met someone Egyptian recently who said to me, I DJ techno, and it's German. And I said, it's not German. He goes, really? And he was really upset. And I said, but don't be upset, because I know nothing about Egyptian music. I only know about Kulthum. What else do I know apart from her, right? And he was like, I'm so ashamed. I said, don't be ashamed, you know. There's nothing to be ashamed about. Just carry on learning, you know.
And also money-wise, it's often a question. Like it's not like a problem that you take stuff culturally and put it into another context and work with it. It's more likely a problem that you take it and then you make the money and the other artists don't make it.
I mean, think about sampling. If you think about all these vocalists who were like, all these strippers and stuff who were like sampled and they're just like never got any money and stuff. Yeah. I think it's an interesting discussion, for sure.
I was recently listening to somebody explaining a Rihanna track, Work, and why they have so many songwriters on it, and in the end it came out because of the sampling and everything, but they cleared everything and they even paid everything really fairly. Is that something, did anybody ever sample you? Did you have like experiences with that?
I don't know. I just know that, like, in the noughties, that somebody was like, Timbaland has your record, has the Jacuzzi record. He's been listening to it. People told us that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if anyone ever sampled it. To be honest, yeah, if it got big, it would be nice to have some pennies. If it didn't, good for you. Have a good time. Yeah. The logical answer to it, right?
Did you ever like take elements of other records or something?
No, because I actually never had a record player hooked up. I don't know. I don't sample much. Yeah. I just record stuff. And I feel like I'm sampling my recordings. It's actually what I feel like I do. I record something, don't like how it is, and just fuck with the whole speed and the whole everything to do with it. No, I never really sampled stuff, actually. But I mean, if you can say that, but if I use an Ableton bass drum, that's sampled. So, yeah.
Are you somebody who visits their own archive a lot? Like, do you sometimes go back and there was this thing in 2008 and get it out and work with that again?
No, actually, no.
Because you're not organized enough to do that?
You know me, right?
Just fishing here.
No, I thought about I don't think I'm there yet where I want to go into my back catalogue and start revaluing it. I don't know why, but no, I've never resampled myself.
And when I asked you before about listening to other music, are you sometimes listening to music you don't like because of reasons like finding inspiration in the weird stuff, like listening to whatever, like country or German music or anything which is really far out, but you have the feeling that by confronting yourself with something like that gives you a certain impulse?
I don't actively seek to do that, but sometimes you get in a cab and there's some music running which is just eye-openingly bad, and you learn from it, I guess, you know. But this is also one of my issues, I've got to say. And when I'm in other places in the world, there's some really good music in the taxis, and here is so bad. This is one of the reasons that I'm just like, I don't know if I can survive anymore.
Do you have the feeling through Uber it got better or worse?
I'm more of a Bolt person, to be honest. I'm a Free Now and a Bolt person. I don't know. I just really, when I'm like in the Ivory Coast, I'm like, every taxi, the rhythms that are happening, even if it's cheesy music, the rhythms are so on fire that you're like, whoa. And then sometimes here I'm like, this is so boring that we just get like a bit of America and then some German sort of stuff. And
I wonder two things. What was your most favorite performance ever? Do you remember, like where you played a gig with the band outfit or like DJ'd, which you would say like this was outstanding because of that reason?
The Philharmonic was pretty special, to be honest. I mean, it really was special. I'm so stupid that I didn't even film it. I didn't realize. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to Hamburg playing the Philharmonic. What an idiot, right? I thought that was really special, actually. And there were other people there who thought it was really special. Niels Fram's manager was there and was just like messaging me for days. I was like, okay, it was probably special, right? So that was special. I don't know. There's always some weird ones, like you DJ somewhere in India and it's so sweaty that it's just so a mad level of, I don't know, I find it hard to deal with superlatives as in the best. I find it really hard to, I'm trying to think. I had a good gig on Sunday at About Blank. I thought it was going to be horrendous.
Where was that?
About Blank.
Oh, nice.
It was packed with ravers because it was just before the Erste Mai. And they were like all nuts. And I was like, oh my God, I'm playing a live show. I wish I was DJing or something. But actually, they were really into it. I had a great show on Sunday. So that's already 5 days ago. It's good.
And kind of the same league of questions. Do you have a favorite track of yourself?
Don't do this superlative stuff. My brain goes mad.
Of yourself.
Oh, a favorite.
Of your own music.
I mean, I think from Perera Elsewhere, I think Bizarre is a very special track. In terms of text, it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to ace that. I think it's a perfectly written song. I think HKV on this album is really good as well. And it's interesting when I said that whole thing about Fortet, you know? And in some reviews, they were like, wow, she sounds like James Holden on this track. And I'm thinking, if I just made a whole album where I sound like James Holden, I'm rich. But I'm not going to do that. But then everyone's going to get confused. They'll be like, why don't you look like James Holden? Why you got that hair?
Well, he has long hair too.
Yeah, but it sounds really funny. But I don't know. Sometimes I want to release music where my face is not on it at all.
Do you think the reception would be totally different?
Absolutely.
Do we have questions here in the room? And hopefully we have some, right?
From Bielefeld.
There's a Bielefeld question.
I saw him. He got really enthusiastic when I said the word Bielefeld.
Yeah, I'm from Bielefeld, and so I'm always happy when I hear somebody say that word even. But that's not my question. You said that you were that your parents, they were like not into pop culture and very strict probably, and had a clear vision of what your life should be. And that your life turned out to be different. You made different decisions, you know. And I wonder whether there was like a tipping point or some form of a rebellious form of emancipation, or did it just happen?
I got kind of lucky that my mum divorced my dad, so I only had to battle one parent.
Yeah.
Then I was left with my mum and my sister, and from these three females, I'm definitely the most masculine energy. So I kind of became like dad bulldozer. And this meant that I could just go out. It kind of meant that my sister's older than me. She did everything she's supposed to do. She's a doctor. It's fine. And then I came after, and I'm tall. I'm taller than most people in my family. And they were literally like, well, maybe she won't get raped. Honestly. I just so I got to go out a lot for that reason, and I think just going out in London really helped me to kind of understand who I was. It's a really multicultural place, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have strict parents?
My parents are from Iran, and they are quite liberal when it comes to, for example, religious values, but they are very strict. And I never had that moment where I was like, up yours, to my parents. And now that I'm 34 years old, I've got my own child, it brings me back, because she's at an age now where I'm having memories of being at her age. So I kind of feel like I was lacking this moment where I was like, you know what? I'm going to do things very differently to how you have. Because I don't know whether this is something that you also had. I always felt like I was standing in awe of my parents' achievements and how hard they had it.
Yeah, for sure. That's this typical kind of immigrant pressure.
That's
also probably why I work pretty hard, actually, because it's a form of, you get this pressure from a very early age. But in the end, I had to run away. I moved to Berlin, a place, there wasn't internet.
Yeah.
So there was no Facebook. So they couldn't be like checking, they couldn't be WhatsApping you every second. They had to get, my mum would have had to get a scratch calling card, those Go Bananas calling cards. And then the phone, I'd be like, oh, it's running out, bye. And basically, then I basically went to a place where they couldn't contact me that easily. If I'd moved after the internet, it would have been different. Darling, have you got a job yet? You know, like then it was completely different. So, but I do appreciate, I know a lot. I've taught a workshop at a school in Hanover, and there was a girl there who was really like, she was so into the workshop as well. And she was like, I'm not allowed to do my hobby. I'm going to be married off. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get killed. There's going to be a fatwa on my head for teaching anything, you know? But it was really interesting. I mean, I totally appreciate what it's like to have, I think it makes you clever as a person to have to navigate in a few different environments. I think it makes you actually pretty emotionally and sort of, it helps you access things.
Thanks.
Do I see another question here in the room?
I think I've got a question regarding your creative process, how you get started, how you start off. And perhaps the question would be, how much time do you need to make a piece of music, or how much time do you give yourself to start off this creative process and bring it to some kind of end?
It's all really good questions. It depends whether I'm making a track or a song. So with a song, I know that the most difficult thing for me is going to be to make a vocal that I like, that touches me and that I think is quality. So I will focus on the chords to start off with, because it's going to be a relationship between those chords and the words that I put down. Because if I'm really looking to make good songs, there's no point me producing a song which is mediocre. So I'm just going to stop at a sketch, literally. It's going to be like, I mean, I will never use a click. I tend to make some like nice reverby sort of rim shot and atmospheric kind of click, and I put down some chords and I record vocals. And then sometimes I'll leave it and I'll open it the next day. But I kind of know quite fast whether that vocal's magic or mediocre. And the mediocre one, I'm like, it's kind of mediocre. So with the song stuff, it works like that. With the instrumental stuff, start really with whatever, and it's kind of fun. And I think the best thing to do is turn it off for a bit, go back the next day and instinctively feel, is this good or bad? You know, when you stick for ages, and also then afterwards you find it harder to give it up because you're like, I put so much work into this has got to end up on my album, right? So that's probably the way that I do it. Does that kind of answer your question? You can elaborate.
Yeah, kind of. So the songs you just mentioned that would be like mediocre, are those songs or tracks you'll skip after 1 day or 2 days where you feel, okay, there's still no magic, I need to stop? Or is it something you'll...
No, I'd prefer to, for the song stuff, I think it's better to write 6 sketches. And you can just do a song sketch in like half an hour. If you really want to do a song sketch in a half an hour, an hour, whatever, you can. And after that, you're going to know, I think, with the vocal stuff, whether there's a magic which is transported for the song stuff, you know? That's probably what I'd advise people for song stuff, you know? Because really, when you spend ages working on something and then you're like, I don't want to give this up, that's awful. It's blinding your vision, you know?
So would you say that the songs that are on your albums are all killer, no filler?
No filler, no. There's no filler on there, I don't think, in terms of songs, really.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do we see another question? Yes, Ricky.
Can you talk about West Africa? You mentioned it before, yeah, and I wonder what that is to you. Yeah.
So it's not just anyway, West Africa is just amazing because of its rhythms and music, right? But the thing in Berlin is everyone turns up with the same skills, right? Everyone kind of knows how to do the same things, yeah? And when you go to, already in West Africa, there's people who've got similar skills to us because they've also got the same internet connections, the same software. But they don't all have the same approach, you know? So I think it's quite interesting when you go there and you're surrounded with people who don't all have DIY, grungy Berlin approach. I think you learn a lot, and they also appreciate it more than when you go to Berlin and you're in this echo chamber of all the same people doing all the same things all at the same time. That's what I meant about West Africa. But there's also very comforting to be in a place like Berlin where you do have like-minded people, because in the end, somewhere like Ivory Coast, it's just 10% of the country who have even got access to the things that we're talking about. So it's very small. But I don't know, I like the vibes. I get treated so nice there.
It's Ivory Coast, but it's also Uganda and Ghana? Or?
I've been to Kenya. I've done a project for Goethe-Institut in Kenya. I've been to Burkina Faso and Cameroon. I've done workshops with people. Also actually with illiterate musicians and stuff. I don't know, I find there's a level of humor there which I don't get in Sri Lanka, for example. Yeah, Sri Lanka, great place, I love it, whatever. Music, I think that they really have it's kind of been diluted a lot. Sri Lanka, their pop music, they don't have the same music culture that you have in West Africa, I feel. And also, in West Africa, it's accessible to men and to women. In Sri Lanka, actually, the best party you could go to, it's probably like 10 tuk-tuk drivers. When they've pimped their tuk-tuk, like this little kind of motorized vehicle, and they put like proper extra bass and LED lights in it, and then they'll get a bottle and they'll just park them in a circle and take their shirts off and like rave. And that's the best party. But if I go there, they're going to be like, so this whole gender religion thing which applies in Sri Lanka. Ivory Coast is like 40 or 50% Christians. They really drink a lot, so it's definitely not a healthy place to be, right? But both genders can really get involved in music, so it's more accessible to me as a person. Yeah, and when I'm in Sri Lanka, they're usually like, "Do you come from Nigeria?" And I say, "Yeah." And I walk on, right? Whereas in Ivory Coast, they're like, "What's up, Queen?" I'm like, "Queen's here." That's it, basically. There's like, I don't know, there's more humor. Somehow I feel like, I don't know, Sri Lanka was colonized 500 years ago. That's a lot of years of subordination, right? Ivory Coast, when was it colonized? I guess 1880. Most of it was colonized like 100 and something years ago, 150 years ago.
Do I see another question?
So it's not really a Viertel, it's the Autobahn. Yeah, I grew up next to the motorway, like a 6 road. Okay, so when you're an immigrant, what do? You're like, shit, I've got to put my kid in a school that makes them, one, speak English better than these white people. Oh, we can't afford a house near where all the nice schools are. Ah, we can if we live on a slip road next to the motorway. Look at us, we're happening now. So I grew up next to the motorway. My nearest shop was the Esso petrol station. I also collected some of my mum's petrol vouchers and got CDs with it. That's how cool I was, right? And a lot of people are like, you just hate England because you grew up on the A3. I was like, yeah, but that's the reality for some people. So it's actually SW15. It's southwest London. It's not so far from Roehampton and Putney, but it basically feels like a motorway for art. Not exciting enough to want to stay. So actually a blessing, because I was like, okay, gotta go. Maybe if I'd lived in a nice part of London, then I would have been like, oh, my life's so nice here. But actually also, I guess that area is also gentrified because, of course, because London is such a big city that anywhere that anyone can live in order to access their jobs and stuff will just go up. I mean, just was not a really pleasant place. No kids, kind kids.
Do I see another question there?
We're getting a lot of questions that only 5 people. Come on, give us a question.
Here we go.
I wonder about one thing. You talked a lot about places like Berlin, London, where you've been to, but I think a lot about London, and I was thinking about the importance of an upbringing in such a city, and even further, if you think if you're born or be upraised like 100 miles away from London in a smaller town, do you think you still would become an artist, or is it like a necessity for you to live in, or maybe like the youth years, I think, before you became an artist?
I mean, I grew up in a time when there was no internet. I think now you could grow up anywhere. If you're curious enough, you could actually you can make whatever music. It's all, you have access to it. But for sure, it was an exposure thing. I mean, just the fact that you stand at a bus stop in London and then there's some guy driving his kids to school. Do you know what the music pumping out of his car might be? This is already like, this is living in the street, you know? There's a whole... And basically this music culture comes from immigrants and it's not the same in other places. So it's hard to say whether... I mean, I think it's pretty amazing that anyone who became an artist could also just... None of my cousins are. All of my cousins live in London. The only person from my whole family just emigrated, left, went to a place where she has no family at all and speaks a different language, whatever. I don't know. I don't know how... Yeah. I think it probably played... My openness to stuff probably comes from London. I think I mean, I look like I've got thick skin and I kind of do have thick skin, but obviously I don't because I'm still a human, right? But this thick skin and this speed and this practicality probably comes from London, that you have forced to just act like that, you know, just get on with it and don't get too heady about it or whatever. London is a multitasking kind of city. And so probably it's helpful. Yeah, there's still, I mean... I don't know. I don't know why they did this, and I'm not going to move back there. But if you find it hard to get an Uber now, actually, to get a cab in the night in London is quite hard. Because there's no Eastern Europeans left. They just bitched about them, sent them all home, and now there's nothing. You're like, great, well done. So.
Thank you.
Have you lived in London? Have you lived in London?
No, but
I always wonder about how important it is to be grown up in a big city, because I come from a small village. So I had to, I think I had to get used to cities like Bochum, which is also small for many people.
And you find it stressful here?
It takes some time. I think Berlin is very, very stressful for me. Of course, a lot of art people go to Berlin, for example. So I always wonder how important it is to be in such a place.
I guess I find Berlin, when I moved there, I was like, wow, I moved to a village. That's how I felt. Like, I know everyone in a week. I knew so many. I was like, oh, it's also a village for me because there are just less people of color. And so you just go, I mean, I meet someone and they'll be like, oh, I think I've never met them in my life. They're like, I saw you on the bike in front of the Edeka. I'm like, yeah, I go to Edeka. I also go to the toilet sometimes. You know what I mean? It's just a normal human, you know. But it is like coming to a smaller city. And I do know other people. My drummer is German and comes from somewhere small. And he's always like, it's so stressful. I'm like, really? But I think sometimes I'm jealous of what you guys have, living in a place where basically the differences, I assume, in a small village, the differences in financial capacity between the individuals are not so big. The differences of the schools you go to, the distances you go to, the safety level of I'm just going to walk to school. By the time wasn't allowed to go to school on my own until I was like 12, 13, you know? So I'm kind of jealous of the stability which you guys get, which I think is quite a healthy sort of, but yeah, maybe it comes out in other trauma later when you have to come to shitty Berlin, right?
Which part of Berlin did you move to in the beginning?
First, to the east, because the east is where it was happening. And do you know what people said to me? They said, du musst nach Kreuzberg sehen, da wohnen Menschen wie du. I said, what the fuck? I want to see this whole east shit. Leave me alone. They're like, they're going to throw you out of the S-Bahn. I was like, I'd rather be thrown out of the S-Bahn, live in Friedrichshain. I want to see the Nazis. Show me the Nazis. Show me the Nazis. They were like, go to Kreuzberg. Da sind die Multikulti people. I was like, you lot are really segregationalists, right? Why are you telling me where to live? And I moved to Friedrichshain. Then I was in Mitte. Lived in WGs. I mean, my room was like, I moved there in the last year of Deutschmarks. I lived for like 300 D-Mark. Then it moved to Euro, and it did get more expensive with Euro pretty fast, but I had super cheap rent. I was in the East for quite a while, and I found the East exciting. I was into all these bullet holes and stuff. I was like, wow, it looks like a war movie. It's actually so British and American. If you think about how much the British have consumed, and Americans, Nazi movies, war movies, Schindler's List. I was really coming out of like, whoa, like this. It's pretty funny. I'm actually sad that I don't get this excitement anymore. I used to get excitement when I'd go past that car park, which Hitler's bunker used to be underneath, you know? I'd be like, whoa. Now I'm like, I kind of want the excitement of a new city, and I don't know, sometimes you feel really humbled in a new city. You're like, I don't feel so humble there anymore, it's boring.
Do I see another question? Yes, Bielefeld is back.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions.
Please.
But maybe I'll start with a technical one. So you were talking about vocal processing. So besides the obvious stuff like equalizing, compression, reverb, and pitch, is there like something where you can, like any program that you use to kind of bend your voice to where you want it? Because there's like not only the pitch, it's also the Klangtextur or something.
So when I started, I just used to do it all on the file in Ableton.
Yeah.
And pitch it there, and I'd change all the settings from like beats to complex to play with those artifacts, see how it wants to sound. Then I started using something called Manipulator, which is a VST, and I got it also because I use it live on the stage, and I've got it on like MIDI pedals, so I could use like a clean mic and then hit on my pedal, and it triggers the manipulator to go on. So I play trumpet in 3 notes. Do you see what I'm saying? So I can do live pitch shifting with manipulator with not that much latency. Yeah. Other things I do is I use the freeze on the hybrid reverb. You know the hybrid reverb on Ableton? It's came with the Ableton 11, and they've got this thing freeze. Like literally you go, and it's like holding for the rest of your life.
Oh, nice.
It just holds in there. There's a track on my album called Stranger. It sounds like I'm singing in the Kölner Cathedral, but I'm not. I just got this.
So you can make drones basically.
You can make drones out of your voice with it.
Yeah, nice.
And then I do, obviously, like simpler has always been a thing for me. Just to
That's
put my
the thing in Ableton, right?
Yeah, so I put my voice on a keyboard and play myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it's all variations of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I was always thinking about where is the Klangtextur of the gender, because it's like the pitch cannot be the only parameter there.
If you do it on the file, do you know what I mean? Do you use Ableton?
I do.
So if you're on an audio file, if you recorded my voice,
Yeah.
and then you can choose whether it's a beats, or you can choose whether it's on repitch, or you can choose whether it's on complex or complex pro. All these settings make a difference, yeah? So I put it on complex pro, and then there are these two numbers.
Yeah.
There are two numbers, and you can mess with these numbers, and you push one all the way down and the one all the way up, and it sounds completely different. You just play with these ranges, and it's the artifacts of the settings of whether it's beats or repitch and stuff, you know? You can also, when you use the transient, you can turn your voice into a beat. But it's basically just messing around. If you're coming to my workshop tomorrow, I can show that as well tomorrow. But I started with all that on the file, you know?
I will come.
Come. Also, the reason that I started pitching it is because what I realized, like, I mean, with Jacuzzi, I do lots of like doubles, but I was like, actually, I love the timing. That the timing is so tight. You're only going to get that type timing by taking exactly the same vocal file, you know? Because you will always sing it as a human in slightly different timing, which is also nice. It adds a more of a stereo effect. But if you just want this really kind of almost artificial backing of this other voice and exactly perfect timing, you do that. And then I also did it because I was genuinely lazy to get up again from the computer and walk 1 meter to my mic. So I'd be like, oh God, right, fine. And I'd start moving the timing to even make it sound like I'd done a double. I'm definitely the kind of singer who's like, oh, I can mess around with that rather than get back on there. It's just really weird. I don't know. It's some of it would be much faster just to go and re-record the vocal, but I have this almost spiritual idea that the first few takes are the ones which really come from the soul, which is so opposite to how pop people are, right? I guess I feel like, you know, the ones where you're feeling it out can somehow have the magic of the rhythm or the magic of how you say a word, or even in the emotionality. And when I try to do it the 8th time, it doesn't feel so important to me, and I think I'm communicating that on the microphone, like, oh yeah, whatever. So I try to mess around with the first initial recordings a lot.
So you record a lot while you are creating?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of stuff might happen as a mistake. And when I go to try and do something again later intentionally, see, I know that, I mean, with my first album, people probably thought I was a singer-songwriter just because I'd messed around with a guitar, recorded my voice on a guitar. They're like, she's singing like this. I'm the worst guitar player. I cannot play a guitar, honestly. I can play a guitar, record it, loop it, add it, extend it, and record my vocal on top. But I know a lot of other musicians, people who really, they'll write a song perfectly, and then they will go to record it after. I would probably get bored in the process, no longer feel the magic of the song, be really ADHD about it, start doubting myself in the process and be like, is this really worth like 10 takes? So in a way, I think this process of me feeling like I'm finding it out, testing it out, and working with, I don't know, what is emotionality and voice, right? And melodics kind of works for me like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was a nice last question and a nice last answer.
Ah, thank you.
Thank you very much for being
Nailed
here.
it.
Thank you guys for not going to the beer garden.